Right before they wheeled me into emergency surgery, my wife stood at the foot of the hospital bed, eyes flat like glass, and said our newborn twins were a burden. Then she turned and walked out, no hesitation, no goodbye, leaving me alone under harsh fluorescent lights while the heart monitor kept screaming that I was still here, still fighting. Nurses called her number again and again, but no one answered. Lying there with my gown damp and my hands shaking, I realized she hadn't just abandoned the babies. She'd abandoned me at my weakest. When I finally woke up after the operation, pain tearing through my abdomen, I found nothing but silence. No flowers, no messages, no wife. Days later, I was home with stitches and 2 crying infants, and the truth started surfacing. Money quietly moved, valuables sold, and whispers spreading that I'd faked my illness to dodge responsibility. I gripped my phone and sent one sentence that cut clean. Don't come back. And that's when Grandpa, who almost never vmешался in family drama, showed up, watched everything, and waited for the perfect moment to speak. If you want to hear how Grandpa's words made her face go pale and flipped this entire story upside down, hit subscribe right now and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part. The twins had a checkup that morning, the kind you can't skip because you need to hear a doctor say they're gaining weight, that their lungs sound clear, that you're not failing them one day at a time. I had them strapped into their car seats in the back of my SUV, diaper bag on the passenger floor, a folded blanket on top like a lid. Danielle stood in the doorway with her phone in her hand, thumb already moving, eyes not on the babies. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't ask which clinic we were going to, even though we'd gone to the same pediatric office in Katy 3 times already. I didn't push it. I'd stopped pushing things in our house because every question turned into a tally. At the clinic, I filled out the forms with one hand and held a bottle with the other. When the nurse weighed them, I watched the numbers like they were a verdict. The pediatrician talked about feeding schedules and reflux and how new parents always think they're doing it wrong. I nodded the way I do at work when someone explains a process I already know. On the drive back, my phone buzzed with a bank alert, then another. Small charges back to back. A boutique name I didn't recognize, then a big box store. I kept my eyes on the road, but my jaw tightened without permission. At home, Danielle was at the kitchen counter, shopping bags spread out like she'd opened a second life on our tile. A new purse sat upright, still stiff from the store. She didn't look up until I set the car seats down. "Those are cute," I said, and I hated how flat my voice came out. "I needed a few things," she replied, like that settled it. I didn't ask why it had to be my card. I didn't ask why she hadn't texted first. A part of me wanted to, but another part remembered every time I'd tried before. The video call started before I could even wash the bottles. Her mother's face filled the screen, already in motion, already mid-judgment. "So, he finally helped today?" my mother-in-law said. Danielle laughed, a quick sound that didn't reach her eyes. "He loves playing hero," she said. "Like taking his own kids to the doctor is some big sacrifice." I stood there with formula powder on my fingers, feeling something sharp under my ribs that wasn't physical. A man can take a lot when he believes he's protecting the peace. That belief can turn into a cage without you noticing the bars. "I'm heading to work," I said. Danielle leaned back in her chair, still on the call. "Go," she said. "If you're so committed, then you can raise them by yourself." The words landed like a casual toss, like she was handing me a chore, not a life. I rinsed the bottle, dried my hands, and lifted one of the twins to my shoulder. The baby's cheek pressed warm against my neck, trusting me like the world had rules. I walked out of the kitchen without arguing, grabbed my keys off the hook, and checked the diaper bag again, even though I'd already packed it, making sure the extra onesies were there, the wipes, the little bottle of gas drops. Out in the driveway, I paused long enough to open the banking app and stare at the charges, thumb hovering over freeze card, while the baby monitor inside the bag crackled softly with the other twins breathing. My thumb hovered over freeze card and then dropped. I told myself I'd deal with it after my shift. The twins needed diapers, not drama. Work needed me steady. Danielle needed whatever she needed. That's how my mind kept arranging things. Everyone first, then me, if there was anything left. By late morning, I was on the warehouse floor in Houston, walking the lanes, checking the dock schedule, signing off on a safety form a supervisor slid under my clipboard. The pain started as a tight pull low in my belly, easy to ignore if you've spent your life ignoring things. I straightened, took a slow breath, kept moving. A forklift beeped behind me. Someone asked about a late pallet. I answered like my body wasn't trying to fold itself in half. An hour passed, maybe 2. The pull turned into a twist, then into a hot, steady clamp that made my vision blur around the edges. I leaned on a rack, pretending to read a label. Sweat gathered at my temples, ran down the side of my face like I'd been working harder than I was. "Marcus, you good?" my lead, Jamal, asked. "Just didn't eat," I said. It came out too quick, too rehearsed. Jamal didn't buy it. He stared at me for a beat, then looked past me like he was already making a decision. "Sit down," he said. "Right now." I tried to wave him off. The motion made my stomach seize. My hand curled into a fist without my permission. "I'm fine," I lied again. That's when my knees dipped. Not a dramatic collapse, just a quiet betrayal. Jamal was on me before I hit the concrete, one arm under my shoulder, his voice suddenly clipped. "I'm taking you in." I mumbled about my shift, the twins, my phone, like any of that mattered more than staying conscious. He grabbed my keys off my belt, got me into his truck, and drove straight to Houston Methodist while I pressed my forearm into my abdomen and tried to breathe through my teeth. In triage, they asked the usual questions. I gave short answers. A nurse wrapped a cuff around my arm, checked my temperature, then called for someone else without bothering to soften her face. They moved fast after that. Blood draw, IV-ACT. A doctor with tired eyes leaned close and said words that shouldn't be said to a man who had been changing diapers at 2 in the morning. "We need to take you to surgery." I nodded once, like I was approving a work order. "Call my wife," I said. "Danielle Reed." A nurse tapped her phone, listened, tried again. No answer. Someone left a message. A second nurse wrote a note in the chart. They rolled me into a room while the medications started to dull the edges. The twins weren't there yet, but my mind kept seeing them, small and uncomplaining, breathing because I kept showing up. Danielle finally appeared near the doorway a little while later, not rushing, not wide-eyed. She looked irritated, like the traffic had inconvenienced her. Behind her, an aide pushed a stroller with the twins in their infant seats. Danielle glanced at me, then at them, then back at me like she was counting the cost. "What is all this?" she asked. "They're taking me in," I said. "I need you to stay with the babies." She exhaled through her nose, sharp. "You always make everything a thing." The doctor came in with consent forms. He explained the risks, the urgency, the timeline. Danielle's attention drifted to her phone, as if the words were meant for someone else. The nurse angled the form toward her. "Ma'am, you're listed as next of kin," Danielle didn't reach for the pen. She looked at the stroller, at the twins, and her mouth tightened like she tasted something bitter. "They're a burden," she said. Quiet, clear, no hesitation. The room went still in a way I'd never felt before. Even the nurse paused. I tried to speak, but my throat didn't cooperate. Danielle stepped back, already turning. "I'm not doing this," she added, and walked out. The nurse hurried after her. I heard her calling Danielle's name down the hall, heard the elevator ding, heard footsteps that never came back. They wheeled me toward the OR anyway. I stared at the ceiling tiles, blinking slow, trying to keep my breathing even. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with another bank alert, then another. I couldn't lift my hand to check, but I could feel each vibration like a reminder that something was being taken while I lay there unable to stop it. When I woke up hours later, my mouth felt like cotton and my abdomen burned. A nurse asked my pain level. I gave a number. She adjusted the drip. The hallway outside filled with regular life, voices, carts, distant laughter, yet no one stepped into my room with flowers or worry or even anger. My phone was on the tray table. The screen lit up the moment I touched it. 3 missed calls from the hospital earlier. None returned. 8 notifications from the bank. I scrolled, eyes heavy, reading charges I didn't recognize, transfers labeled external, a cash withdrawal that made my stomach turn in a new way. My finger hovered over the call button next to Danielle's name, then drifted to my lawyer's contact from an old consultation I'd never followed through on. And the cursor blinked at the top of a blank text, like it was waiting to see what kind of man I was going to be. The discharge nurse handed me a stack of papers and a list of restrictions, like I was being released back into a life that hadn't already changed. No lifting, no driving for a bit. Keep the incision clean. Watch for fever. Call if the pain spikes. I nodded through it, signed where they pointed, then forced myself upright and walked out because there wasn't anyone coming to get me. Jamal drove me home again. He didn't ask questions. He didn't have to. His jaw stayed tight the whole ride, like he was trying not to say something that would make me feel smaller. At the house, the twins were in the living room in their seats, faces scrunched and red, the kind of cry that makes your spine react before your mind does. Danielle wasn't there. No note, no text. Just the sound of 2 tiny people learning the world isn't gentle. I moved slow, careful with my stomach, and still ended up wincing as I lifted 1 seat at a time. Formula was low. Bottles sat in the sink, crusted over. The diaper pail was full. That first night, I learned what exhaustion really means. Not the tired you fix with sleep, but the kind that sits behind your eyes and makes simple math feel complicated. I warmed bottles, changed diapers, walked the living room in short loops so the stitches wouldn't pull. Every time I sat down, one of them started up again like they could sense weakness. Around 2 in the morning, I went to the bedroom dresser for more onesies and opened the top drawer. The divider was pushed aside. The envelope I kept my watch warranty in was gone. I checked the next drawer. The small box where I stored the watch itself, the one my dad gave me when I made supervisor, wasn't there either. I stood still, hand resting on the edge of the drawer, waiting for my brain to catch up. A quick scan turned into a sweep. The tablet I used for work training videos was missing. The backup hard drive I kept for family photos wasn't in its usual spot. The file folder with our mortgage paperwork had been flipped through, the pages bent like someone searched in a hurry. I didn't shout her name. I didn't call her right away. I just looked around my own room and felt like a guest. My phone buzzed before sunrise. A message from a cousin I hadn't talked to in months. "You okay, man? Danielle said you had some kind of episode." Another one came in from a mutual friend. "Bro, I heard you're making her do everything alone. What's going on?" I stared at the screen, then at the twins, then at the sink, and a strange thought passed through me. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I'd exaggerated. Maybe the surgery wasn't as serious as it felt. Then my abdomen tightened when I shifted my weight, and the reality pulled me back in. A man doesn't fake staples and swelling. A hospital doesn't schedule emergency surgery for attention. Late that morning, I drove, against the advice, because there wasn't anyone else. The pediatric office needed a weight check. The twins needed it. I needed to keep moving before I sat down and let my mind spiral. At the clinic, Elena came in with a clipboard. She had that calm you see in people who live around emergencies. She checked their breathing, asked about feeding, then glanced at me for longer than necessary. "You look like you haven't slept," she said. "I haven't," I answered, and my voice cracked on the last word. She didn't offer pity. She didn't tell me to be strong. She lowered her tone like she was giving a practical instruction. "Listen, don't argue with her. Don't chase the story she's telling people. You can't out-talk someone who's committed to lying." I swallowed. "Then what do I do?" Elena tapped the clipboard with the pen. "You document everything. Times you feed them, appointments, messages, bank alerts. If she's moving money, save the screenshots. If she's saying things, keep the texts. Judges don't rule on vibes, they rule on facts." That sentence settled in my chest, because it sounded like the world I understood: rules, records, accountability. Back in the parking lot, I sat in the driver's seat with the twins strapped behind me and opened a fresh folder on my phone. I labeled it Kids. Then I made another one and labeled it Danielle. My thumb moved without shaking this time. I saved the bank notifications. I took photos of the empty drawer. I forwarded the messages from family and friends into an email thread I created for myself. A proverb my father used to say drifted up while I typed. "A calm sea never made a skilled sailor." I didn't feel skilled. I felt cornered. Still, the folder grew with each tap, and when the twins started crying again, I hit send on the first email to my own address and reached into the back seat for a bottle, doing both jobs at once because there wasn't any other choice. The folders on my phone kept growing, but the house didn't get quieter. The twins rotated through needs like clockwork: feed, burp, change, pace the living room until their cries softened. Between bottles, I answered work emails with one hand and held a burp cloth with the other, pretending I was still the same man who walked the warehouse floor without flinching. A key turned in the front door late that afternoon. Danielle stepped in like she'd only gone out for groceries. No apology, no hesitation. Her hair was pulled back tight, phone already in her palm. She looked past me, scanned the twins, then fixed her eyes on the diaper bag by the couch. "We need to talk," she said. "They need to eat," I replied, and kept shaking the bottle to mix the formula. She didn't wait. "I'm taking over. Their shots, their schedule, all of it. You're not in a place to make decisions right now." The way she said it made my stomach twist, not from surgery this time. It sounded like an order you give to someone you don't respect. I set the bottle down and wiped my hands on a paper towel. "You left," I said, "at the hospital." Danielle's face didn't change. "Don't start," she said. "You were fine. They cut you open, stitched you up, and now you want to act like you're dying. I didn't argue the medical facts. I'd learned something in the last few days. If a person is committed to rewriting reality, your words only give them more material. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it and smirked like she'd timed something. "People are asking about you," she said. "They're worried." That night, while one twin slept and the other fought it, I opened Facebook for the first time in weeks. Danielle's post sat near the top of my feed, framed like a confession without admitting anything. "Some people will do anything to avoid responsibility," it read. "Pray for mothers who have to do it all while someone else plays victim." Comments stacked beneath it, heart emojis. "Stay strong. You're such a good mom." A friend from church wrote, "Men these days don't know how to lead." My jaw locked. Not because I wanted to type back, but because I knew how quickly a lie becomes a group project. The phone rang right after, my mother-in-law. I let it go to voicemail. She called again, then again. I answered on the third ring because the twins startled at the vibration. "Hello?" Her voice came in hot. "What is wrong with you?" she snapped. "Danielle is exhausted. She says you're not stable. You can't even care for those babies after what happened to you." "She wasn't there," I said, keeping my tone even. "I've been here." "Don't lie to me," she shot back. "She told me everything." I looked down at the baby in my arms, tiny fist gripping my shirt like it was an anchor. "You're calling to yell," I said, "not to understand." "If you don't let her take the babies, she'll do what she has to do," my mother-in-law said. "She can call CPS. They'll agree those children need their mother." There it was. The threat dressed up as concern. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anyone. I ended the call the same way I end unsafe conversations at work. Clean, short, no extra words. "Noted," I said, and hung up. The next morning, I drove to my bank before my shift, incision pulling every time I got in and out of the car. At the counter, I asked for printouts, checking, savings, any external transfers. I requested a new debit card. I froze the old one. Then I sat in the parking lot and changed passwords. Email, banking, phone carrier. Using a passphrase no one in my family would guess. At lunch, I stepped into an office supply store and bought a cheap accordion folder, the kind people use for receipts and tax forms. At home that evening, I slid the bank statements inside, followed by hospital discharge papers, the pediatric appointment summaries, and screenshots I printed at work. Elena's words stayed in my head. Facts. I opened my contacts, found the name of a family law attorney downtown I'd saved years ago and never called, and tapped the number while rocking one twin with my foot and patting the other's back with my free hand. The attorney's receptionist gave me a clipboard and a bottle of water, like she could see the strain in my posture. I wrote my name, my address, the twins' birthdays, then stared at the line that asked for spouse and felt my pen hesitate. A man in a gray suit stepped out a few minutes later. "Marcus Reed?" he asked. I followed him into a small office downtown. No fancy view, just a desk, a legal pad, and shelves of binders that looked used. He didn't waste time trying to make me comfortable. That helped. "Tell me what happened," he said. I kept it tight. Surgery. She left. Money moved. Rumors. CPS threat. He listened without interrupting, then leaned back and spoke in the same tone I use at work when a process has to be followed or people get hurt. "If you want to protect your kids and your position as their primary caregiver, you need temporary orders. Fast." My throat tightened. "I'm their father," I said. "I'm already taking care of them." "In your house, yes," he replied. "In court, nothing exists until you can show it. A judge doesn't award custody based on who feels right. They look at patterns, records, stability." He slid a notepad toward me. "Start a parenting log. Feeding times, diapers, appointments, who shows up and who doesn't. Save every message. Don't react publicly. Don't get dragged into an argument where you look angry and she looks fragile." "She cries on command," I said before I could stop myself. He nodded once, like he'd heard that sentence 1,000 times. "Then you let her cry," he said. "You stay factual. Tears don't override evidence." Outside, my phone buzzed while I waited for the elevator. A notification from an unknown number. I almost deleted it. Instead, I opened it. 2 photos loaded. Danielle at a pawn shop counter. Her profile clear enough that there wasn't room for denial. One hand on a pen, the other holding something small and familiar. My watch box. The timestamp sat in the corner of the image, same day as my surgery, right in the window when I'd been under anesthesia. The second photo showed a receipt on the counter with her name printed on it. My fingers went cold. Not from fear, from clarity. The word she'd used in the ER, burden, clicked into place with everything else. That wasn't a slip. That was a world view. When there was nothing to gain, love became a cost she refused to pay. I saved the photos, then forwarded them to my email thread and to the attorney. No message, just the files. Back at the warehouse, my supervisor called me into his office before I could put my lunch in the fridge. "Everything okay at home?" he asked, careful. "Why?" I said. He shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. "Danielle reached out," he admitted. "Said you might not be in a good place after surgery. She was concerned." Of course she was. I kept my face neutral. "I'm cleared to work," I said. "If you need paperwork, I'll bring it." He watched me for a second, then nodded. "Just take care of yourself," he said. On my break, 2 relatives texted within minutes of each other. One asked if I needed help calming down. Another said Danielle was scared of my temper. I read the words twice, trying to figure out how someone could invent a version of me so easily. Elena caught me at the pediatric office later that week when I brought the twins for another check. She didn't ask for details. She glanced at my face and understood enough. "You're doing the right thing," she said. "Feels like I'm losing people," I answered. She shrugged slightly. "People who only know you through her story were never yours to begin with." I took that in without arguing. In the parking lot, I opened my parenting log app and typed the time, the weight check, the next appointment. Then I pulled up my bank account and set alerts for every transfer, every withdrawal, every charge. The twins fussed in the back seat, hungry again, and I drove home with my hands steady on the wheel, already deciding what the next filing would be called and which documents would back it up. The twins ran my day in 2-hour circles: feed, burp, change, settle, repeat. Between those loops, I built a second life on paper. A spiral notebook sat on the counter next to the formula. Every page had dates, times, and short notes written in block letters because cursive felt too emotional for what I was doing. 6:12 a.m. Bottle, 3 ounces. 6:35 a.m. Diaper, wet. 7:10 a.m. Sleep. It looked obsessive. It was survival. Receipts went into the accordion folder. CVS for infant Tylenol. Target for wipes, the pediatric copay. The gas station I stopped at because I couldn't risk running out with 2 babies in the car. I stapled them to printer paper and wrote what each purchase was for. My hands moved the way they do at work when there's an incident report to complete. No flourish, no anger, just facts. The attorney emailed a checklist. Request hospital records. Get a copy of discharge summary. Ask for call logs. Document any threats. I called Houston Methodist's Medical Records Department and listened to automated prompts while bouncing a baby on my knee. "Press 3 for records requests," the robot voice said. I pressed 3. A tired woman came on the line. I gave my information, asked how to request documentation of attempted contact with next of kin. She explained what they could release and what required forms. I asked for the forms. She sent them. The next call went to the security office. That one took more care. "I'm requesting footage for a legal matter," I said. "We don't release video directly," the man replied. "I understand," I told him. "I'm asking about the process so my attorney can submit the right request." His tone softened. People respond to calm, even when they don't want to. "Have your lawyer send a preservation letter," he said. "Include dates, approximate times, and location." I wrote preservation letter on a sticky note and slapped it onto my laptop. Danielle didn't show up in person much during that stretch, but she stayed present in other ways. A message would come in at midnight. "You think you can take my kids from me?" Another one landed an hour later. "You're gonna regret this." I didn't answer. I screenshot. I saved. I forwarded to my attorney. Then I went back to warming a bottle. When the phone would ring with her name, I let it go. Communication moved to text as much as possible because the written word doesn't forget. My attorney told me to keep it short if I had to respond, so I did. "They're fed. They have an appointment Friday at 10. I will follow the pediatrician's schedule. Any legal matters can go through counsel." No arguing, no pleading, no explaining the obvious. I'd spent too many years believing clarity could fix someone who benefited from confusion. A week later, I sat across from my attorney again, this time with the accordion folder thick enough to stand upright. He flipped through pages, nodded, set a few documents into separate piles. "We'll file for temporary orders," he said. "Primary conservatorship. A standard possession schedule at first, maybe supervised if her behavior supports it." My stomach tightened at the word supervised, not because I wanted to punish her, because I knew how quickly she weaponized anything she touched. "I'm not trying to keep them from their mother," I said. He looked at me like he was measuring my backbone. "You're trying to keep them safe," he corrected. "And you're trying to keep yourself from being buried under her narrative. That's different." He had me sign paperwork, petition, affidavit, a request for temporary restraining orders related to financial accounts. The ink bled slightly because my hand still wasn't fully steady from recovery. On the way out, I stopped at the courthouse clerk's office across town to confirm filing procedures. The woman behind the glass didn't care about my story. She cared about signatures and fees and whether the forms were filled in correctly. That neutrality felt almost comforting. Back home, I packed a small tote with things I didn't want to lose: birth certificates, social security cards, my dad's watch paperwork, copies of the trust documents my attorney suggested I locate if they existed. I didn't have them, but I had enough to know what mattered. I drove the tote to Jamal's place after my shift and asked him to hold it. "You sure?" he said, eyeing the folder like it might explode. "Just for a while," I answered. He didn't ask for the details. He put it in a closet and closed the door. That night, a login alert flashed on my phone. Someone tried to access my email from an unfamiliar device. The location pinged on the map as somewhere across town. I changed my password again, turned on two-factor authentication, updated recovery questions with answers that weren't true, locked down my phone carrier account with a PIN. 10 minutes later, the baby monitor crackled, then went quiet, then crackled again. The sound made my shoulders tighten. I checked both babies. They were fine, breathing steady, limbs loose with sleep. The monitor kept making that stuttery noise anyway, like interference. Another text arrived from an unknown number. "Stop pushing her, or you'll lose everything." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. Then I saved it to the folder and set the phone face down. A car sat across the street the next afternoon when I came home. Not parked the way a neighbor parks, not angled like someone was about to get out. Just sitting there. I carried the twins inside, set them down, and watched through the blinds for a moment. The car didn't move. A silhouette shifted in the driver's seat, then stillness again. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I wrote down the make and model. I typed the plate number into my notes. I took a photo without stepping outside. Dinner was a microwave meal eaten standing up while one twin fussed and the other kicked in the bouncer. I cleaned bottles, wiped counters, folded a small pile of baby clothes, and kept my voice low when I sang nonsense just to soothe them. Somewhere in the middle of that routine, the front door handle jiggled once. Not hard. Not like someone trying to break in. More like a test. A reminder. My body went still. Hands stopped mid-wipe. The babies didn't notice. They kept making small sounds, living in the present the way adults forget how to. The handle went still again. No knock followed. No footsteps retreated loud enough to hear. I finished wiping the counter, washed my hands, and walked to the hallway closet where I'd started keeping my folder and the printed copies of everything. The twins started crying at the same time, hungry again, and I balanced the bottle warmer with my elbow while sliding the legal papers into a new labeled section, already thinking through the next call I needed to make in the morning. The mediation room at Harris County felt like every other office space I'd ever sat in. Table, chairs, a clock that didn't care what day you were having. My attorney set my folder in front of me. Danielle arrived with her own lawyer and a tissue pack already in her hand, like it was part of the outfit. The mediator introduced herself, explained ground rules, then asked Danielle to speak first. Danielle didn't ease into it. She started with a sigh, then let her eyes fill up on schedule. "I've been doing everything," she said, voice wavering. "He's punishing me because he's embarrassed. He won't let me see my babies." Her lawyer slid in smoothly. "Mr. Reed has used finances and access to control my client," he added. "She's concerned about his mental state following surgery." The words landed in the room and stuck. The mediator's face stayed neutral, but the slight tilt of her head told me she was listening harder now. Danielle dabbed her eyes and looked at the table like she couldn't bear the weight of her own pain. She didn't look at me once. Old instincts kicked up, the part of me that wants to correct the record, to explain, to prove I'm not that guy. Another part, deeper, remembered how it feels to be left behind and then blamed for being alone. That feeling tried to climb my throat. I kept my hands flat on the table until the urge passed. When the mediator turned to me, my mouth opened, then closed. I took a breath through my nose and gave myself one beat of silence so my voice wouldn't shake. "The twins have been with me," I said. "I've followed their medical schedule. I've offered structured time through written communication. I'm asking for stability, not revenge." Danielle's tears sped up. "He's lying," she said. "He acts calm, but he's not. He's cold. He doesn't even care what I went through." Her lawyer pushed the next move like it was inevitable. "We're requesting temporary orders for child support and for Ms. Reed to have final decision-making authority for medical care," he said. "Given Mr. Reed's condition, it's in the children's best interest." So that was the play. Make me a wallet with stitches. My attorney leaned slightly toward me, quiet. "Let's give them the paper," he said. I slid the first stack across the table. Feeding logs, appointment summaries, pharmacy receipts, screenshots of bank alerts, the hospital timeline showing attempts to reach my wife. Danielle's hand paused mid-dab when she saw the date stamps. Her lawyer tried to wave it off. "Anyone can write a log," he said. My attorney nodded as if he agreed, then added the part they couldn't rewrite. "Which is why we also have third-party records," he said. "Hospital call attempts, financial activity during surgery, and a preservation request for ER hallway footage." Danielle's eyes flicked up for the first time, quick and sharp, then back down to the tissues. The mediator's pen moved faster. She asked questions now, specific ones. Dates, times. Who picked up the babies from the clinic? Who paid which bills? Who was physically present during recovery? Answers came out of my mouth clean, no extra words, like I was reading from a report. When the mediator called for a short break, I didn't walk over to Danielle. I didn't stare her down. I stepped into the hallway, checked my phone, and opened my parenting log to add the time I'd dropped the twins off with Jamal for the appointment, then typed a note to my attorney about the medical decision request while my incision tightened under my shirt from standing too long. I pulled into my grandfather's driveway in Baton Rouge with the twins asleep in back and my phone still buzzing from the mediation emails. Jamal had helped me load the car, diapers, bottles, the stroller, a small cooler with breast milk a friend had donated, and my accordion folder tucked under the passenger seat like it belonged there. Grandpa opened the front door before I knocked. He didn't rush me, didn't fuss over the babies, didn't ask why I looked worn down. He stepped aside and let me carry the seats in like this was just what family did. Inside, he cleared space on the dining table without being told. A man in his 70s can move slow and still control a room. He watched me set the twins down, watched the way my hands hovered a second longer than necessary, like I was counting their breaths. He poured coffee into a mug and slid it toward me. "Eat something," he said. I shook my head. "Later." Grandpa didn't argue. He sat across from me, forearms on the table, eyes steady. "You keep the papers?" he asked. The question hit a place in my chest I didn't expect. Not because it hurt, because it meant he already understood what mattered. I reached under the seat where I'd hidden the folder and set it on the table. He didn't open it right away, he just nodded once. "Good," he said. I started to talk, but the words came out wrong. Too many details, not enough air. He let me spill it anyway. ER, surgery, the transfers, the post, the CPS threat, the way she cried in mediation like she'd rehearsed it. Grandpa didn't react the way people usually do. No big sighs, no anger on my behalf. He listened, then stood and walked down the hallway like he was going to grab a jacket. He came back with a small metal lockbox, the kind people keep under a bed or in a closet. He placed it on the table, spun the dial, and opened it without looking at his hands. Inside were folders, neatly labeled. One said, "Reed Family Trust." Another said, "Property." A third said, "Marriage." He slid the property file toward me first. The deed sat on top. "That house in Katy," he said, plain. "It's in my name, always was. Y'all been paying into it, but title never changed." My mouth went dry. "Danielle told me." "Danielle tells a lot," he cut in. Not mean, just finished. He opened the marriage folder and pulled out a copy of a post-nuptial agreement with Danielle's signature on it. I recognized it in a flash, her handwriting, the way she looped the D like it needed attention. "She signed this," Grandpa said, "then acted like it disappeared." I stared at the pages until the words blurred. My attorney had asked if anything like this existed. I'd said no because I didn't know. Grandpa tapped the table once, a small sound that snapped me back. "There's more," he said. He reached into the box again and pulled out an old phone, the kind he only used for calls. He pressed play on a voice memo. Danielle's voice filled the room, casual, laughing at something. Then the words, "Those twins are a burden." My stomach clenched. Not from the surgery, from hearing it outside the hospital, from hearing it when she thought she was safe. Grandpa stopped the recording before it could run long. "I keep what matters," he said, "for moments like this." I didn't ask how he got it. Not yet. The reason didn't change the truth. My phone buzzed again, a new text from Danielle popping up on the screen. "Bring my babies home. Don't make me take this further." I looked at the lockbox, then at the twins, then at Grandpa, and typed a short message to my attorney. "We have trust/property docs and a recording. Call me tonight." Then I set the phone down and reached for a bottle as one of the twins started to stir. My attorney met me outside the courtroom in Houston with a fresh stack of copies and a look that said he'd slept even less than I had. "We're ready," he said. Grandpa stood a few steps behind me, hands folded over his cane. He'd dressed the way he always did for serious things, simple, clean, no extra. People make assumptions about older black men in courtrooms. Grandpa understood that and still carried himself like the room belonged to him. Danielle arrived with her lawyer and a friend I didn't recognize, someone positioned to look supportive. Danielle's eyes went straight to the carrier seats beside my attorney's assistant, then flicked to Grandpa. Her mouth tightened for half a second before she pasted on a sad face. The bailiff called the case. We walked in. Everyone sat. The judge looked tired in the way family court judges do, like they've heard every version of the same story and still have to decide which kids get the safest outcome. Danielle's lawyer spoke first. "Your Honor, my client has been systematically cut off from her newborn children," he said. "Mr. Reed has displayed instability following emergency surgery, and he's used finances to control access. We're asking for primary conservatorship for Ms. Reed, with Mr. Reed receiving a standard schedule. We also request that Ms. Reed have final medical decision-making authority, given Mr. Reed's condition." Danielle took her cue. Tears showed up right on time. "I've begged him," she said. "He's cold. He won't even let me hold them. He's angry at me, and he's taking it out on the babies." Her friend nodded at the right moments, a quiet chorus. The judge turned toward me. "Mr. Reed, do you want to respond?" My attorney touched my folder lightly, a reminder. I kept my answers short, the way Elena told me to. "The twins have been in my care," I said. "I've followed their medical schedule. I've offered structured contact through written communication. I'm asking for stability and temporary orders that reflect the actual caregiving." Danielle's lawyer jumped in. "He's presenting as calm, but we have concerns about emotional abuse," he said. "My client fears retaliation." The word abuse hung there, heavy and sticky. It's the kind of word that can ruin a man before he even gets a chance to speak. The judge looked at my attorney. "Evidence," she said. "I want evidence, not impressions." My attorney stood. "Yes, Your Honor," he said. "We have third-party records from the hospital, financial activity during Mr. Reed's surgery, documented parenting logs, and communications. We also have additional documentation relevant to property and financial control." Danielle's lawyer scoffed softly, like paper couldn't compete with feelings. My attorney didn't take the bait. He handed up the hospital call attempt logs, the discharge summary, and the timeline showing when Danielle was contacted and when she failed to respond. He followed with bank statements highlighting transfers and withdrawals during the surgery window. Then he paused, like he was waiting for the right second. "And we have a witness," he said. Grandpa stood without drama, no big sigh, no glance around for attention. He walked to the front with his cane tapping once per step and raised his hand to be sworn in. His voice came out even, low. "I'm Clarence Reed," he said. "I'm the paternal grandfather." The judge asked him his relationship to us and why he was there. Grandpa answered like he'd been preparing for this his whole life. "Because my grandson needed facts," he said. "And because there are assets and documents my granddaughter-in-law has misrepresented." My attorney handed up the deed showing the Katie House title in Grandpa's name and the trust paperwork. Danielle's eyes widened, then narrowed, then widened again as she tried to calculate. "That can't be right," she whispered, not into a microphone, just into the air. Grandpa continued. "There's also a post-nuptial agreement," he said, "signed by Danielle Reed." Her lawyer shifted in his seat, suddenly alert. The judge leaned forward. "Do you have it?" she asked. My attorney presented the copy. Danielle's face lost color around the mouth first. Her hand went to her throat like she needed air. Then came the recording. Not played for the whole courtroom, just offered in the way my attorney advised, submitted as evidence with proper foundation, with the context of when it was recorded and why. Grandpa didn't embellish it. He didn't add commentary. He just told the truth. He'd kept it because he'd heard her say things no mother should say about her own children. The judge's expression changed, subtle but real, the way it does when a story stops being a story. "I'm issuing temporary orders," she said after a moment, voice firm. "Mr. Reed will remain primary conservator at this time. Ms. Reed will have a possession schedule as outlined, with conditions. I'm also ordering a financial review regarding the disputed transfers and property representations." Danielle started to speak, but her lawyer touched her arm and stopped her. We filed out. She didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead like the hallway might open up and swallow her before anyone could ask another question, while Grandpa walked beside me at my pace, and my attorney murmured about next steps as I reached down to check the twins' blankets and adjusted the strap on the carrier without taking my eyes off the exit. The apartment lease was signed with a pen that kept slipping in my fingers. Not from nerves, from the last stretch of healing that still made my grip unreliable. I took my time anyway. Rushing was how I'd ended up with holes in my life before. The place sat a short drive from Buffalo Bayou. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen, carpet that would probably never look clean again once the twins started crawling. I brought in the cribs first, because priorities change when you stop pretending you can fix everything with patience. A folding changing table went against the wall, diapers in one drawer, wipes in another, bottles lined up by the sink. I taped a simple schedule to the fridge, feedings, naps, appointments, written in marker like a work plan. It wasn't a motivational poster. It was a map out of chaos. One old family photo came with me. Not a happy one, just a real one. Danielle and I holding the twins in the hospital before everything went sideways. I didn't hang it. I set it in a drawer with the paperwork, where it couldn't argue with me. Communication shifted the way the judge ordered. Danielle didn't text me directly anymore, at least not with her name attached. Messages came through her attorney. Sometimes a new number would try anyway, a short jab on a Tuesday night. "You think you won?" I didn't respond. I forwarded it. That was the pattern now. Court order, parenting app, lawyer email, no private meetings, no late-night talks, no just 5 minutes in a parking lot. The boundary wasn't a punishment. It was a lock on a door she kept trying to push open. The financial review moved forward. My attorney updated me in plain language. Disputed transfers flagged, receipts requested, explanations demanded. Danielle had to answer questions she couldn't cry her way around. The pawn shop photos didn't look like a misunderstanding on paper. The house title and trust paperwork took away the story she'd built around being entitled to things that weren't hers. Her visitation became structured and limited, the kind that forces someone to show up on time or lose the slot. No drop-ins, no surprise, "I'm in the driveway." The court didn't care about her captions online, it cared about compliance. One Saturday afternoon, I strapped the twins into the stroller and walked the trail near the bayou. They weren't old enough to notice much, but they liked motion, and I needed the habit of leaving the apartment for something other than work or court. My phone vibrated twice in my pocket. I already knew what it was. Another message, another attempt to pull me back into a conversation that went nowhere. I checked the screen long enough to confirm it wasn't an emergency about the kids, then turned it off. Under a bridge, I picked one twin up and held him against my chest. The other kicked at the air from the stroller, impatient. I adjusted the blanket, tightened the strap, and kept moving. Back at the apartment, I washed bottles, wiped down the counter, and logged the next feeding time while the twins fussed in their bouncers, the day continuing without any need for an explanation.